introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Advith. I'm one of the co-founders of Pylon along with Marty. Good to see everyone
Nice.
here.
Awesome. And then let's see, we can see people who are in here. Let me check. We'll be able to see as people roll in. So let's give people some moments. But Advith, how was your morning so far?
Good. Excited to show off some of our AI features and how we think about it. And it's really cold in San Francisco, but hopefully it gets warmer next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. And then also for anyone who's already listening, we have a good combination of existing customers and prospects. So I think the questions and topics will be, quite varied. So we'll be able to go through AI for, all sorts of teams. So this will be really fun. And yeah, we haven't done a webinar on this exact topic of kind of AI specific to B2B. And I think it's one of the reasons we are doing well actually as a company. And so we have a lot of opinions on this and of course, product that we'll be able to get into. Okay, so I'm being told we have the green light to go. We have a lot of people already listening. So yeah, let's get started. So this is going to be a webinar on AI and specifically how you can apply it to B2B support teams and workflows. We, of course, at Pylon only think about it B2B. This is our core focus. It's our bread and butter. And so we know a lot about it. And yeah, maybe Advith, you and I can do like super quick introductions. My name's Marty. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the company. If you're a prospect, you might interact with me at some point. But yeah, Advith, if you want to go next.
Yeah, I'm Advith. I'm the co-founder and CTO. I spent a lot of time thinking about one, our post-sales experience, and two, our product and like how AI integrates into our product.
Awesome. So we can just get right into it. So I'm going to pull up a deck that we prepared for this to help us walk through. So as mentioned, this is going to be about playbooks that you can build out and processes, how B2B, how AI can be specific to B2B, and in fact should be, given it's a different type of workflow. Kind of went through introductions already. And then for anyone who is less familiar with Pylon overall, we are a customer support platform that's specifically built for B2B companies. So this is our bread and butter workflow. And so it's the ticketing plus the AI and all these adjacent intelligent products as well. So we all know there's a lot of hype today in AI in customer support. And a lot of people are thinking specifically just about ticket deflection, but actually there's a lot more that you can do. Especially on the B2B front. And so, yeah, we can start to jam on this together, Advith. So, it's not just deflection. That the way we think about it is, in consumer, you have just one customer-facing team who handles a high volume of quite simple tickets. In B2B, you often have lower volume tickets, higher complexity, and more teams that are actually involved with customer-facing work. And so, like digging into the first way that we actually see people getting a lot of value is not just straight deflection, but actually cross-team workflows. So Advith, if you want to comment on that.
For a support team at a B2B company, they're often very adjacent to some teams like customer success or account management, product, often professional services, could even be looped into some pre-sales things. And so basically what's important in a B2B context is the ability for one, the support team to get context on what's going on with all of these other teams. For example, imagine looking at a ticket and knowing, hey, the customer is renewals coming up soon. They had a really poor call with their customer success manager a week ago where they talked about some ongoing issue, and then they write in about that issue. And so how can we use AI basically to help? Because B2B is so cross-team, someone on the support team needs context from all the other teams to do a good job. And so how do you use the right tools to surface that information to someone on your team so that they don't need to go digging, both in other tools, which is kind of the second point, but also go ask a bunch of other people. There have been times in the past where someone on the support team will need to go message someone on the CSM team to ask them like, hey, like, what did you guys talk about in your last call? Or like, hey, do you know if this customer is actually doing well? Like they just asked about this and it seems like things might not be going well. Support also ends up being pretty adjacent to revenue in that way in B2B companies where they're not at all. And they're just like thought of as a cost center at B2C type companies. And so it's pretty important to arm the support team with a lot of context from all the other different teams. So yeah, it's also actually important vice versa, where a lot of the things going on in support might be the first one that sees like a signal of an expansion coming through because the customer is asking questions about a new product, and they might need to flag that to the sales team or your account management team. And so how do you use AI to help you do that so there's not so much of a burden on the support team given how important they are at B2B companies?
Yeah, and maybe we could walk through some examples. So, like internally at Pylon, like what are all the customer facing teams we have, and like how do yeah, who actually is interacting with customers?
Yeah, at Pylon, we have our support team that handles kind of like ongoing troubleshooting questions. Sometimes hops on calls with customers, but not often. Basically, helps customers answer bit more basic product questions and also just troubleshoot any issues they're running into. We have our CSM team that's more in charge of the relationship and also in charge of like expansion revenue. So they're often hopping on, weekly, monthly calls with customers, talking through sometimes ongoing issues, but also trying to find other opportunities for our product to be used by the customer, help them onboard, help them get more value out of the product. We have a solutions engineering team that does that same type of motion, but in a more technical manner for deeper parts of the product, say some of the AI parts of our product, and also helps customers migrate from old systems onto our system, which ends up, yeah, being very in the weeds. We have a sales team, obviously, that also uses Pylon, though the focus of Pylon is post sales, but our sales team also ends up talking to customers a lot and needing a lot of the same context and kind of have a bit of a budding professional service motion as well.
And so the when we talk about like cross team collaboration, you just mentioned basically like four or five different functions that even we as a company have at our stage. And so a lot of the cross team workflows end up being way more about internal work than ticket
That's
deflection.
right.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, like can we talk about some more examples that like we get a ton of value out of, for example, or that you see like other B2B teams where it's specifically focused on that cross team portion?
Yeah, yeah, and then one more team I forgot to mention is basically the product team, which also ends up talking to the customer as their, like, core role, but obviously their workflows are different. They try to figure out what we need to build based on kind of what conversations with customers look like. So support, yeah, ends up being like like, kinda closest to the customer in a lot of these situations. So specific things that might happen is, support is having a conversation with the customer. They realize, as I mentioned, that the customer might not have been onboarded well, just given the type of questions that are coming in, and so then support needs to flag that to the CS team and be like, hey, this customer might not have been onboarded properly. And so that's like a cross team bridge. Support also often sees what some of the kind of the volume of tickets are. If the volume of tickets coming in is high, they see what all the feature requests are. The product team gets a bit more removed from like the day to day of the customer, and the support team and the CS team is like kind of closest to that. And so the support team in our case uses Pylon to look at a list of all the feature requests that are coming in and flag the ones that feel the most important or kind of new emerging trends for issues to our product team, which in this case is me and one of our other co-founders. So
And so for example, I guess the like, and we'll go into example for context for everyone. We'll in like literally the next slide go through kind of like the old way of operating for a lot of workflows, and then how it rolls into new ways of operating as well. But so in this example of hey, like feature requests that are coming in, so support teams very customer facing, they have a pulse check on the customer. They already have to have a relationship with, let's say, the product team, and in this case you were saying basically AI can capture and group
yeah,
different feature requests and make that relationship stronger, better data, more evidence.
because imagine you're like a fast growing company, your customer base is increasing a lot, your ticket volume's always increasing, you're perpetually kind of understaffed or behind on hiring. Like your support team probably doesn't have enough time to every day comb through every single ticket, categorize it, figure out is this a feature request or not? What area of the product is it? Like which one, where do the trends seem like they're showing up? And so ideally you give a lot of we can with Pylon give a lot of lift to the support team to like help them do that way more easily, where they can just look at a page and still provide a lot of their input, but use AI to collect all the evidence maybe, or just kind of highlight a feature request that they might have missed just because they're in the weeds of solving specific tickets. They might have missed like a broader trend, and so how can we flag that? And then the support team can be the one that makes sense of it and actually goes and hands it to the product team. So that's kind of how we've prioritized some two upcoming things on our roadmap, which are our WhatsApp, and not to reveal too much, but our WhatsApp integration, and we're also building out phone support. It's just something that customers have been asking for repeatedly, and AI can actually just quickly look through every conversation you've had with the customer and flag those, and the support team can be the gut check because they can feel that coming, but it's hard for them to show the 90 times someone has asked for a WhatsApp integration.
Yep, makes sense. And then I'm curious, like, well, a couple other workflows that I've seen both customers and prospects get really excited about. One is even when it comes to escalating things to engineering that might be high urgency in that moment. So we have something called anomaly detection, which looks at, hey, across all of your support tickets, is there some theme of new issue that's popping up that seems that there's some spike in? And before it's like, okay, every individually kind of sees the request that they're getting, but now there's a way to across the org surface, hey, there is a new spike in this type of question or that type of issue that then can be escalated to engineering. And once again, the evidence would be captured and grouped for you already. So you wouldn't have to go and find every instance where someone is having this or reporting this issue. Actually, AI can be really good at helping with that as well. Yeah.
Yep. And then just to add in one more quickly is that we also will flag on accounts like whether or not super high level it seems like the account is doing well, from the perspective of like seeing all the conversations that they've been having and all the calls they've been having, and there's various signals we use around whether they've like kind of mentioned competitors or they're like talking about the product in a certain way or they're clearly having a bunch of issues, and that's useful for the support team because oftentimes they will see that as a signal of flagging the ticket to the CSM first to get their opinion on like, is this customer in a super sensitive state? And it'd be pretty hard to tell or very manual pre-AI for a given ticket. Like you have to look through all the past tickets each time a new ticket comes in, or just remember, that this customer, you feel like you heard, something was going on with them. Now you could just flag a lot of those stuff more automatically and still have someone on the support or CS team audit that is true.
Yep, makes sense. And then this kind of leads into the cross team workflows. A big piece of that is also data and data sharing. And yeah, I'm curious. So bullet two here for us is the context switching and cognitive overload. So first off, like, can you frame kind of what that means and maybe what that looked like before?
Yeah, so basically what that means is, especially in B2B support, you end up needing to both talk to a lot of different people or like rotate the ticket between a lot of different teams to get a final resolution to the customer, but also the actual kind of person troubleshooting the ticket often needs to check a lot of different tools or basically access a lot of different information in order to solve the ticket. Plus you might need to juggle a lot of tickets at the same time, given that each question is much more complicated than something like a B2C angle. And so the goal here is the same vein of like, you could still do it before, but it was just way more tedious. Like there's simple things that you could have that you would have to do on every ticket. For example, a customer might ask a question and you have to go wait a few hours because you were working on another ticket and follow up with them, and you then context switch to another ticket and then you're deep in that and then you have to come back to this one and you just have to ask them a simple follow-up question to get a little more information from the customer. Like stuff like this you can kind of hand off the most basic things to AI, so you're basically focused on when you show up on a ticket, like as much of the information you need to actually solve it right then and there is already available, whether that's like the initial back and forth of collecting a bit more information, whether that's like, oh, the fact that your product team pushed out a new documentation page for this feature last night, but you didn't know about it. So instead of having to go ask internally, the AI can just surface that to you. You can click it and still understand it and figure out how to synthesize and give the customer an answer, but you don't need to do a rock fetch for all these different things. And the more effort you're willing to invest into setting up the AI, the more information it can kind of surface to you.
And where are the most common data sources that you're seeing are like most valuable to pull in and and how we structure that?
A lot of the most important data sources are things that are already in Pylon, so to speak. So past tickets is a great way to help solve future tickets, obviously, because you would have already given. It's likely that your question isn't entirely new, and you can often have some starting point for something similar that has happened in the past. Another one is like documentation of some kind, whether that's knowledge base articles, internal docs or run books, or public like marketing pages around pricing or other things that you've kind of posted publicly documentation wise. Those end up being the most common. More sophisticated workflows often end up fetching internal data from like your product database. Like when someone writes in, can you figure out what their like live plan information is, or specific things that are useful for your business that are just stored inside of like your product database.
Understood. And then how, I guess on the AI front, so there's a piece here where we can fetch data from these other systems in an automated way. Can you elaborate on like how AI actually plays a part in that?
Yeah, there's couple different pieces. So in terms of reducing the context switching, say for like, oh, you're working on a ticket and the customer doesn't give you enough information. It's like, can you basically with Pylon, for example, you could build an AI that just doesn't try to answer the question, but just asks the customer a follow-up question to get a bit more information and then hands the ticket back off to you. You could extend that by having it also fetch some internal information and dump it as like an internal note on the ticket, as an example. Pylon will also automatically look through all your docs and knowledge base content and surface to you when you show up on an issue, like what might be the most relevant article to look at. So you don't have to go do that search yourself. And then same with past tickets. Yeah.
Cool. And then we'll go through for everyone listening, we'll go through some example workflows and what that looks like in practice in like a live demo as well, so we can see what it is. And then what's the last piece? What does build your support engine mean?
Yeah, this is almost like a reframing, I think, of how we recommend thinking about support, or often a lot of customer facing teams, in the same way of just like building this engine. Now with AI, I think you need a different type of mindset to figure out where you can get leverage on your team. So as you're doing repetitive workflows, the goal is for you to have tooling available where you can kind of have this engineers or analytical mindset to figure out how to get continually improve the AI to get in a state where those like very simple workflows are getting handed off. You're essentially trying to build this engine where your engine, or like you're like the puppet master essentially, or folks on your team ideally that you hire are puppet masters for the AI, where they're basically identifying that here's my business workflow, here are the spots where you will show an example in a second, but here are the spots where it often slows down, or we're just doing things that I don't really need to be doing. Like I can be focused on like doing the deep debugging work, or like, doing some of the deeper relationship work. And I can just have AI hand off a bunch of I can just hand off a bunch of these smaller things to the AI. So a recommended exercise for you is to actually write down what like your ticket lifecycle looks like today, as we'll show in the next couple slides, for just a couple different common scenarios. And then there should be a bunch of spots where you don't actually need someone on your team manually doing some work. You can hand that off to AI, and then that just either allows you to keep your team lean or allows you to focus on delivering a better experience to customers, which is, I think, the part that AI is not great at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's some questions coming in. I'll try to, some of them were from previous topics, so I might get to them later. One about this topic, Raghav said, with AI bridging gaps on sourcing the information, what would you recommend as three signals support should keep an eye out for if ticket history, sentiments, and volume are already accounted for?
Three signals support should keep an eye. I think a lot of the support signals are business specific overall. Like it's, for example, if you're like if you're a security company, you might look for customers mentioning certain things. For us, for example, we look for people mentioning competitors in sales conversations, and that's a flag that we might need to treat the conversation differently. We look for renewal date as like if the customer's coming up on renewal, then we kind of want to treat the interaction differently. So I think there's some generic SaaS ones that are a bit more like CS metrics that are useful for support, but it's often business specific that for the things that are most useful for you to look at.
Yep, understood. And let's actually go into kind of some of these life cycles. So,
Sure.
can you walk us through, yeah, the old way of doing something, and we can visualize this together, and then the next way?
Yeah, here's like a more or less kind of stereotypical like B2B question that's like a little bit more technical leaning. So say a customer is asking about running into sync failures with their integration, and you're building some kind of like data sync product as an example. And so that initial question is too vague to actually answer. And so say that customer asks you the question and you're in a different time zone, you wait several hours before you see the ticket, and then you respond which integration, you context switch into another ticket because you don't actually have any information to figure out what they're talking about. uh, that alone is like, yeah, somewhere where AI can help, and we'll show that in the next slide. But then after that, how do you say the customer responds? They say it's like the Salesforce integration that they're running into issues with. Then you might go into your internal tool to like fetch the logs for the Salesforce integration. You might check your status page, Salesforce's status page. You might ping internally to the team that works on integrations and see if anything is going on. You might ask, other folks on the support team whether they're seeing issues coming in about the Salesforce integration. These are, yeah, all of these steps basically are things that you have to do in some form, but ideally AI does them for you and kind of surfaces the results, so to speak, and you can just gut check before moving to the next step. And then, yeah, the scavenger hunt is basically not only do you have to ask a bunch of people, but check a bunch of sources, whether it's like now all of your content might be kind of split across. You might have a knowledge base article on how the Salesforce integration works, and you're working through the steps there. You might have an internal engineering doc that's useful to look at around like some more internals on how the Salesforce integration works in Notion. And you might, as we mentioned a second ago, have a bunch of internal tools where you can look at logs and try to dig for whether something is going wrong. Then you kind of synthesize all that information and draft a response to the customer based on all the stuff you've learned here. And then if it's some kind of common issue or thing you think is a good candidate for doc for knowledge base, you add that to your backlog or your team's backlog for kind of writing more content or updating content later. So yeah, a lot of steps to the process. And this doesn't even include a lot of the stuff you might want to do after the fact. Like, you probably want to notice whether an outage is going on. You probably want to notice whether the Salesforce integration just has chronic issues, and you actually want to flag that to your product team so these bugs stop coming up in the future because the Salesforce integration keeps breaking for whatever reason. So there's a lot of things you might want to do after the fact too. And so, yeah, it ends up being like a lot of work, that you can probably spend your time doing really just the drafting the response step or the thinking through the answer deeply step, and have a lot of the other information kind of flow up to you is the idea.
Awesome. And then I guess the new way of doing this.
Yeah, just talk through it briefly and then try to jump into a demo so you can actually just see it live. But the new demo, the new way is basically as many of those steps as possible. Try to hand off some of the more menial work to AI in some form. And so if somebody asks about running into sync failures with your integration, you can have an AI just immediately clarify the question to the customer and ask them for, like, what integration is this, or like the most obvious clarifying question that would get you enough information to actually work on the ticket. And if that customer asks you that question off hours when your support team's not online, your support team is kind of in a team meeting or something else is going on, they have too many tickets, the AI it gets around that issue entirely and gets the customer an immediate clarification, and the information is waiting for you when you as someone on the support team are available to answer this question. Then you can also have that AI agent or other tools basically fetch information internally and post it on the ticket, so that when you arrive at it, the goal is for there to be as much information as possible, where you don't need to still consult other people or other sources to try and answer the question. You can just see all the information you need. Then, especially relevant in a B2B, or only relevant in a B2B context, you want to see what has the CSM said about this account. What have we figured out about this account automatically in terms of, when they're renewing? Is there any risk? Like, has anything bad happened with them recently? What's their sentiment? That might change or should change the way that you answer the customer's question. Then oftentimes people punt this kind of knowledge-based workflow to way later in the process because it's just too time consuming. You can now, like, once you actually give the customer an answer to this question, you can quickly turn that into a knowledge-based article and keep moving in your workflow. And then a lot of other things to basically help you after the fact. Do reporting on the fact that you got a bunch of issues about integrations, or find that this is like a feature. Find what all the feature requests are and hand it off to your product team. A bunch of the stuff we talked about earlier. So I'll just jump into kind of trying to show this live here.
Awesome. And then as you're pulling that up, there were some questions that came up. So from James, how have you been thinking about how to handle the growing awareness of AI support agents in the context of how customers are beginning to start conversations with phrases such as talk to a human, to skip past run books you may have built to automate their queries? Advith, any thoughts on that flow and how to skip past?
The main thing is, I think you have to be really nuanced about how you deploy in B2B, like full deflection AI agents. And so in the example you'll see in a second, I think you'll get the idea where if the agent just asks a clarifying question, like say it was a scenario we just described where someone asked about, I'm having a sync failure with my integration, and the AI agent just asks like, what integration are you running into an issue with? It's way less likely they'll just say talk to a human right away versus just say Salesforce. And then if the agent immediately hands it off to a human because it doesn't know how to handle that scenario, then I think it reduces the chance for that type of problem happening, versus if the customer said, I'm running into a sync failure with my integration, and the AI like dumps like an entire like 5 options for random things that might be happening without enough context, then I think then you see the talk to a human path like get evoked way more often.
Awesome. And then also, maybe one more question before we get into it is from Himanshu. AI has become very popular in customer-facing situations. What are use cases where we shouldn't be trying to implement AI, or where it still isn't a great fit?
Good question. I think similar to the last answer, I think the guidance overall is to like focus on a lot of back office workflows where it's like not super customer facing. So basically things like what we'll show in a second, but like helping you write your knowledge base, helping you find all the common things customers are saying, help you figure out whether customer sentiment is poor, helping surface key information about a customer automatically. There are still points of leverage in for to use AI in a customer facing way, as you'll see in a second. It's maybe for like the clarifying questions, or like they collect all the information up front, but not try to end to end automate. And then in the end to end automation, stuff is getting better, but it's just way harder and way more nuanced in B2B. So it kind of depends on the type of business and product you have. I basically recommend like thinking a little deeply about like where that pieces in your business. For some customers, it's like they also have a PLG component, and those customers are just asking way easier questions and way higher volume. And it's okay to be wrong sometimes, but there's just so many questions and so few support people, you can't answer them anyway. So it's kind of nice to have an AI deflect them. So there's stuff like that. Some people do it off hours, where it's still beneficial to get customers some kind of response within 20 minutes, because your support team's like, in the US, but your customers are in a different time zone. And so it's still kind of nice from their perspective to get an immediate answer, even if it's not always fully right. So I think there's specific scenarios like that. There's also, you might identify certain types of questions that you get that are easy to hand off to the AI. And another way to think about it is like maybe during the onboarding phase, you get a lot of simple questions. And so you just deploy the AI for onboarding, or you just deploy the AI for like your lowest tier of customers. So there's still ways you can get a lot of leverage. It's just the recommendation is to be extremely nuanced about kind of how you think about it.
And one thing I'll just say really quick is the the question was also specifically like is not a good fit, and what I'll say is just like don't default to just trying to have AI deflect everything like that. As Advit said right from the start, there is like the back office work, the internal work is actually where there is a lot of value that like invisible value that you can get, which is also much lower risk. And frankly, AI is capable of doing today. And like even if it makes a mistake, it's okay, and you'll recover. Versus anything customer facing, obviously, is super high risk, is especially in a B2B context. So maybe you split out like your segments of customers and only turn on customer facing responses for a smaller segment. But yeah, don't recommend it for especially the higher tier customers. Cool.
I can go into sharing my screen now. So there's number of things I want to touch on here. Trying to demo basically that live, like what a new life cycle of a ticket might look like. So Marty's going to pretend to be the customer and kind of write in that exact question that we were looking at on the slides, and it should show up here in a second once he does that, and I'll just kind of show you what happens here. So here's a question he just wrote in. I'm running into sync with your integration. You can see this agent here is actually working. This AI agent is working on trying to ask a clarifying question immediately. So it asked to clarify which integration this is for. Marty's going to say which integration it's for. And so just to highlight what's happening here. So this is kind of exactly what we said in the scenario. The AI, just did a clarifying question, but didn't. The AI asked a clarifying question, but sort of didn't actually try to answer the question outright or do anything like that. In fact, it just found out more information from the customer that it's a Salesforce integration. It
And
pinged a
also,
backend
sorry,
API. Oh yeah,
really quickly, Cassie, is it possible to make the screen share full screen for people? Someone said it's hard to read. Or Advis, if you could like zoom in maybe slightly.
Yeah, second. Let me know if that helps.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think that's better. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this AI agent has basically just clarified the question, figured out from the customer that there's a Salesforce integration. There was no lag, so there's no like unnecessary amount of time wasted where the customer just like wrote in their question and didn't continue the conversation. The AI agent ended up pinging a backend API, finding that the Salesforce integration is offline and sending us a link to like more settings we can see about the state of the integration. And then it's actually handed it off to the troubleshooting team, and that issue's gotten auto routed to me as the Salesforce expert. I'll try to show how that happened in a second, but I just wanted to show a couple other things first. So this is the kind of AI, an example use case of an AI agent where it's just like not doing something super customer facing, but just loading the ticket with context so it could be ready when you show up to it. Another thing you see here is some suggestions on what you as the support person can look at to help work on this ticket. So here's a knowledge base article that's gotten linked automatically for debugging Salesforce sync errors. And so I didn't have to go rock fetch for this article. It just showed up here. I can click it. And now I still have to do all the thinking for figuring out how I can resolve this customer's issue. But I got armed with the resources on like how to do that. And so that's kind of the angle that we feel like is most promising in B2B support for right now. I also see links to like past tickets, and so I can click on other tickets that were similar to just see how they were resolved in the past, and that will also help me get context for this ticket. Even if they're not exactly the same, it will help me kind of build up the context I need to actually work on this ticket, and I don't have to go search through or open another tab and do a fetch for all other issues that are similar. So it's something that's pretty challenging to do pre AI. Other
Yeah,
things I want to highlight while yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say, so,
Yeah.
and just to recap some of this, so, what happened was, hey, question came in, automatically got chosen to be routed to an agent, and can you talk about, like, how that even like, how did the agent even get assigned to the ticket in the first place?
Yeah, let me jump to that. So we have this part of our product called triggers, and this is part of the recommended nuanced rollout of kind of AI deflection in B2B is here. I'm just, for the purpose of this demo, I'm just having issues from the Spotify account, which was the demo you just saw, getting routed to the AI for a first pass. Because say I know that Spotify is like a not that important of a customer, or I know they write in off hours a ton, for example. And so I can load this with as much kind of like nuance, so to speak, as I want. I can filter this down to a certain tier of customers, or customers who are like kind of not active that often, or who are writing in off hours, or who are I can filter this down to customers who are only positive sentiment. There are all kinds of things I can do there. So that's how it got routed to the AI. And you saw a
And could you
second
show
later.
an
Yeah.
example of the, like, actual AI routing? If, like, let's say we did
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
another okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so the way that you might have noticed on the ticket, that I'll just hop back to it so you can see it again. After the AI kind of posted the internal context and collected the information, it routed it to me and the troubleshooting team specifically. And just to show you how that works is here, the AI knows that once it's finished doing its work to kind of set the team to troubleshooting given the type of issue it is. And then I am like the expert, for example, about integrations on the troubleshooting team. And so you can actually use AI to route issues to the right people or set of people internally. And so this is like two layers of AI, right? It's like the AI agent doing the initial work, and then the AI agent handing it off to a human team. And then within the human team, there's AI to tell us which person on the team is the best fit for this question. We actually use this internally for like 100% of our issue routing at Pylon. It's at a bit of a higher layer where we decide as questions come in whether they should go to support or customer success or solutions, or different customer facing teams depending on what the question is about. Like questions about, we'll have a trigger inside of our org where if questions are about like billing or credit cards or changing your payment details or things like this, it'll go to our billing team. And if it's about migrating from an old system, et cetera, it'll go to solutions team. And so you can kind of build out. This is a very iterative process, but you can essentially um, keep carving away pieces of your workflow that you can have AI do for you, and get it into a good spot, and then move on to less and less lower hanging things. So just to hop back to a couple more things to show on this issue. Other things I just wanted to highlight is while this issue was going on, AI also automatically labeled this as like an integrations issue, or specifically about the integrations product area. What that means is later, either you, a product person, anyone who finds this information relevant, can quickly search through a report on all the tickets and see everything that came from integrations without having to like manually label that on every single ticket. And so there's kind of just one of those AI things that's running an autopilot in the background. You do have to put in a bit of work depending on how complex your product is, and think about it in a certain way to get it to label well. But once you get it into somewhat of a steady state, it's actually pretty useful to not have to do a ton of extra manual work on each ticket. And that's an example of like carving off a bit of your workflow piece by piece that you can hand off to AI. I also wanted to show some of the kind of account context that's useful often, and some of the nice part about some of the like extra complexity but nice part about B2B, where you can also see all of this information about what's going on with this account as a customer of yours. These are all things that are often very business specific and that you have to set up. But essentially, I can see that this customer's low sentiment, that they've mentioned a competitor in the past, why they have low sentiment, which competitors they mentioned. So this really helps me as a support person be way closer to the business, if that makes sense. And I can actually answer the question in a way that's like helpful for generating an upsell or preventing a churn, just given the fact that I now know all of this information. And I want to click into this so we can see a bit more information. So this is often very, very useful for a customer success team, but the cross pollination of information, it just makes a support person, as I said, way more close to the business and also be able to do their job better. Is you can also set up and see a bunch of contextual information about the customer, whether that's like feature requests they've opened, why their sentiment is negative, what type of upsell opportunities there are, what commercial conversations you've had with them, um, who the key stakeholders are. All of these things are very easily surfaceable. Also wanted to show how easy it kind of is to set some of that stuff up, and how, to a point we'll get to later in the slides, this is like a very, like figure map out your process and figure out which parts you can carve away type mindset. Where here's an example where I might want to just automatically surface what CRM my customers are using because people are writing in about them. And for example, if this customer Spotify wrote in, hey, I'm running into issues with my integration, but they didn't mention their CRM, maybe they've already mentioned it in a past conversation and I don't want to re-ask them, or I don't want the AI agent to even have to re-ask them. So here's an example of being able to iterate on a field like that, where I can say, what CRM does this customer use? Find the CRM that this customer uses. And so this will basically go look across all the things discussed with this customer and try to just automate. This will happen for all customers, but I zoom this into the specific one we're looking at for the demo. It'll just look at which CRM this customer is using, and I can do this for anything. And I can say who's the biggest detractor at this customer, and it'll sort of try to surface that information.
And add this.
And
Can
yeah,
you clarify as well? So
yeah.
like this is coming from which data sources?
Yeah, this is coming from all the past conversations the customers had with you, either in a support context or not. That's like conversations over email, whether that's to their support email or to a direct email to someone on your team. If you use Slack or Microsoft Teams or Discord to talk to your customers, it's anything that's ever been mentioned there.
And
If you,
also
yeah,
in Slack, the internal deal channels as well. Is that right?
that's right. Yeah, it's both places where you might talk to the customer directly in those platforms, or places you might talk about the customer internally with your team where there's still a lot of context. It also will draw from video calls. So if you talk to your customers live on video calls and you record them through some call recorder, we ingest that. This also looks at kind of data that you write in yourself into Pylon, a bit more work on your end, but the goal, and we'll get to this in a later slide, is to kind of load some of these tools with more and more context so they can have more and more. The whole value is the fact that you can't manually look over all that data yourself. And so the more data this has, the more likelihood it flags some of the things that you're looking for. Find the biggest detractor of our product. So this is basically looking through and it'll try to find, this is ironically the user Marty was writing in as. And so this is something you can just now quickly, play around with, write this kind of AI prompt for, and then surface, and now it's visible on every ticket. And you kind of have this additional information that both you and the AI can take advantage of when trying to respond to the customer or drafting a response.
And this is so important. I think like one thing to call out here is typically support teams and existing products focus a lot on just structured data around the ticket itself. So it's like, hey, the priority of this ticket, or what product area is this ticket about? And it's very like ticket level. And then any account level data, you just have to pull that from CRM or other data sources. But for the first time now, you can actually create your own structured fields that give you really relevant context in your support platform. And so you can construct that data on the fly on your own without having to even wait for other teams to build it for you. And this is not only, this interface is kind of like if you've ever used Clay or tools like that, where, it's looking at all the data sources we have about the customer, allowing you to create structured fields out of it. So detractors, competitors, sentiment, all that stuff. And that's totally in your control. And so you're able to do that in a really, really flexible way, and then have that information, of course, surfaced right then and there. So both in the sidebar, and then as Advith showed, if you actually want to click into any of the account, what we call notebooks. So like when you click on the account, go into that view, like all that context is also totally customizable. And so really like your ability to gather context about customers in with is super. This is like one of the best use cases for AI that we've seen in a B2B case. And like in a consumer use case, it doesn't make sense at all. You just have contacts and all the conversations are just in the ticketing system. In this case, man, it's so helpful. All these contacts spread across all these other customer facing teams or different places, all just synced into one place. And then you can actually just prompt your way to whatever data you expect to want to have.
Yep. Yeah, and you can do some pretty crazy things with this. Like you can, this is a demo account, so there's not that much interesting data, but you can ask like, summarize what happened in the latest call with this customer, latest meeting with this customer, and now someone who's working on a ticket can just see that information of like in one line what was discussed on the call. And oftentimes the like tickets that come right after calls are stuff about the call, and so you immediately can get that context and then always dig deeper if you want to, but not have to kind of, yeah, do this rock fetch where you spend 30 minutes like going and like looking at your CSM's calendar, seeing if they had a call with the customer, clicking into it, logging into like Gong, trying to find the call recording, trying to go see if they talked about something in specific or what they mentioned. All of that you don't need to, is not a good use of time. Maybe show like one or two more things. We've talked about a lot of the ticket lifecycle things, just to highlight some of the things you can do after the fact. The feature requests we were alluding to before. So here's a tab where we will just automatically aggregate for you all the feature requests that have been raised by all your customers, again across any data source, whether that's in a call, in a conversation where they emailed your CSM directly, in a support conversation, across any channel. We'll try to kind of find those and then try to surface them to you automatically, give you like a stack rank list of which ones get mentioned the most, and allow you to just dig into all the specific evidence of like, here's Datadog mentioning this feature request and the way they want the Salesforce integration. Here's like each of these other customers and how they mentioned it. And so this is something you can use to like kind of validate your own intuition about what you feel like you've been hearing a lot, or something you can hand to the product team directly to have them stop asking you, you know, asking you for like an export of tickets about X every week. So a lot of workflows you can do here. You can do just a bit of manual curation, but just have AI do 80% of the work, so you don't have to spend a ton of time on this. Then I'll show one more thing for now.
And by the way, sorry, really
Yeah, go
quick
for it.
on that topic,
Yeah.
because there was a question
Okay.
earlier
Yeah.
about specifically the feature product intelligence. How do you
Okay.
filter out these features from the customer if there are duplicates within linear?
Um, if there are duplicates within linear, you can merge a bunch of these feature requests together in Pylon. If there's like several instances of a Salesforce integration, I can just like merge a bunch of them together,
Or
and
maybe
that'll provide.
maybe the answer here might actually be so if you already have like something in linear that is a feature request, right? We can actually link this to an existing linear ticket that already is there.
That's right. That's right. You
So
can link this to existing linear tickets, and any deduplication workflow you have in linear will work fine, and kind of apply nicely, so to speak, to stuff in Pylon that is linked to, say, two duplicate linear tickets. You can just merge these in linear.
yeah, and so to be clear, like this is not intended to be like a completely separate and like detached data source from linear. Like this, yeah, if there's already a linear ticket someone's reported, just link it to the existing one. If there isn't, you can
Right.
create a new one from here. So both
Yeah.
workflows work.
Maybe the way to think about this is as really just as evidence for figuring out what parts of the product should be worked on or what new features should be shipped, and then the actual work of getting it done is still makes sense to belong in linear, and you can still follow your normal process there. And um, you should be able to, yeah, essentially inform the stuff in linear and tie them together. And the remaining part of the workflow that we hope to build into the product as well soon is, how do you close the loop with your customers, which is when that thing gets shipped, you now know all the 85 people who asked for it. So can you, one, like tell the CSM on their next call with Datadog the fact that this feature got shipped, so they can go tell them? Can you track that whether or not you've told all 85 people? And maybe in a future state, can you tell them automatically? So all of these type of workflows.
And a couple other questions back to the
Yeah.
account intelligence piece really quick. The
Okay.
from Sloan, does the customer sentiment flow into CRM or customer management platforms to contribute to health scoring?
Yeah, you can either do health scoring inside of Pylon directly, where you can use sentiment. You can both construct these AI fields or use calculated fields, and then write a customer health score directly in Pylon, or you can sync a number of these fields back directly into your CRM. So either is possible.
Yeah, and to clarify, actually, a lot of people are starting to. This is related to Sand, your question. Does Pylon integrate with products? For example, Churn Zero is one of them. We actually are replacing products like existing customer success platforms at this point. So part of the reason we have this focus on B2B is we recognize that the post sales team should be working really closely together. So customer support, customer success as two examples, where it's not just ticketing, but as you can see, there are account views, there are places to put product usage data. You can build formulas to construct health scores here. And the advantage is the time to value to set something like this up in Pylon, because we already have the data, is really, really fast. And then, yeah, we're actually building out all the same workflows that you would be able to build into a trend zero. So the answer right now is so yes, you can take that data, like make it in Pylon, and then like actually sync it back to your CRM. Which then can be, if you have an existing CSP you want to integrate with, like a Turn Zero, you can do that. Or you can also just do it in us. So you have the option to sync it out, or if you want to migrate to using us as the full customer platform, that's also possible. And Sam, the other parts of your question, do we integrate with Gong? Yes. So all that data flows in here. That's a critical piece of information that we expect a lot of our customers to have. And so, yeah, any call we integrate with, let's see, yeah, here like 8 call recorders at this point. And so all that data helps construct any of the account level fields or account context that you might want to have. And then even in like the Copilot, the Ask AI, where you can ask questions about a customer. So there's both what Advith is showing, like a almost like chat GPT like interface on top of all your customer data. You will be able to ask questions across support tickets and account context from things like call recordings. And then if you want to show the issue level as well, Copilot, there's also a place here where you can actually, or not there, but so there's like an Ask AI here on the right where you can actually ask any questions about the customer, and it's not just the tickets like most ticketing systems. We're actually the only support platform that then looks at the account level context coming from a call recorder. So yeah, it's incredibly powerful, and yeah, for B2B, it just becomes really valuable. And one more thing, Advith, did you show the summary tab of the like Ask
I
AI?
can flash it right here.
This is one of those small, like it's hard to bring it up as like a core feature that people should be excited about, and frankly it's not only B2B specific, but because you do typically have more complicated questions, it does become more valuable. Like one of my favorite things after we release this feature is being looped into some sort of ticket. I have to go in, there's a bunch of context there already, both internal notes and customer conversation, and then a summary can be generated just on the fly of, hey, here's what's actually going on. And so very easy summary for you in terms of, hey, like what's already happened in this ticket. And, there's nothing worse than like being looped into a ticket when you're like jumping between things or, and you just need quick context. This just helps you clarify that. So, hey, what's actually happened? What are the next steps? And then if you have more questions, you can actually use Ask AI to dig in deeper. And then really quick to answer some of these questions as they're coming in. So we answered the question on, yes, you can export data like sentiment or any of these account fields into your CRM or kind of use Pylon as a CSP itself. We do integrate with Jira, Confluence. Yeah, Advith, any comments on that?
No direct integration with Confluence today, but we do have endpoints where you can, if you're willing to do a bit of work yourself, kind of write in all of that data.
Yep. And then for let's see, 2 more questions. Sand also asked about how do you monitor hallucinations in AI responses to clients?
Yeah, I mean, we have our own tooling internally, and maybe I can actually jump to the AI agents page here. I think the one I set up for this demo was product agent here. You can actually see a bunch of stuff that this agent is doing, including logs of basically, every this is the issue we just worked on in the demo here. And so you can see a log of basically everything that it's done, why it did each thing, what sources it used, the fact that it called this like demo API and the response it got back. And so the short answer is we try to surface as much information to you as possible to help you understand exactly what the AI is doing. And this is also related to like, okay, now that the AI has done all this stuff, what's like how do I make it better and keep improving things? And so this agent is just for the demo, so it hasn't done that much, but we basically give you a bunch of information on like what improvements you can make to your content to like have this agent do better in the future. So trying to give you a lot of tools there. For hallucination specifically, we use some tooling on our end to basically try and prevent that from happening, but we also give you a lot of visibility and testing tools so that you can see what happened in live cases and also test things out a ton before you actually deploy them.
Another related question, not to the AI directly, okay, maybe this is related. We can ask from Elon, how does the AI agent impact the statistic of first response that SLA metrics are often based on?
Yeah, we've taken an opinion on this for now, but I think it depends on like how you think about things technically. We are counting the AI agent response as a first response today, so it impacts positively your metric for first response if you have it deployed. in a situation like this.
Which, yeah, and I think then maybe the answer becomes more on, hey, like resolution might become the more relevant metric, right? Or frankly, some sort of like synthetic CSAT, where, hey, instead of, yeah, looking at just something like first response time, maybe resolution becomes more important because your first response time,
Yeah,
you're basically going to blow through the roof, because you'll ask your clarifying question, which is exactly what a human would have done anyway. So
yeah.
that it's almost like a solid metric at that point. But then resolution, of course, becomes, maybe the other thing to look at. Or yeah, lots of people are now trying to use the AI custom fields to, instead of having to ask the customer a question directly, generating some sort of like synthetic CSAT score based on the AI looking at the ticket.
The other way, just from a reporting perspective, is to like just split out your reporting for the ones that have the AI answering and the ones that don't. Assuming you're not going to deploy AI on every single interaction, then you can also see kind of, so to speak, human first response time and agent first response time.
Yep. Yeah, I think there was also a question here. I'm looking in the chat on, there's, is there a way to integrate with HubSpot? So yes, in CRM, we kind of answered that already, but then there was a piece on like main POC, CSM, and like actual account, maybe owners or like relevant stakeholders. That
Hmm.
data you can both sync in from HubSpot or your CRM. And so that data can just be written in. Automatically. So I'm just showing you, all you would have to do is go into your CRM settings, choose like, okay, add CSM owner or account owner or whatever. That data syncs into Pylon, or vice versa. If you have that data that you want to be like editing and owning in Pylon, you can write that data back into HubSpot or Salesforce. Yeah. And then let me make sure. I think, yeah, there are lots of questions. Um, let's see. One was on the like feature request feature, or the
Hmm.
product intelligence. Can you customize feature request data by data points other than volume? For example, follower count, referrals, time on platform,
I see.
GMV.
Not yet. Today is a this part of our product is a bit more nascent, so we're going to be adding a lot more to it. Today we have mentions, and you can prioritize by revenue. So if you sync in from your CRM like ARR of each customer, then this will help you prioritize to like, is it the large ARR customers that are asking for this feature, and then allow you to do that mechanism of prioritization. But it makes
But
sense that different folks prioritize in different ways. Yeah,
yeah, I guess as long as right now it feels like any dollar value amount should be
that's
settable
right.
here,
That's
right?
right. That's
So
right.
like a
Yeah, that is
GMV,
true. Yeah,
and
yeah.
technically then, yeah, you could do any, or is it any metric actually?
Any number metric today, it's a bit confusing because the intention is revenue based prioritization, but any number metric technically you can use to prioritize today.
So, okay, yeah, technically, it was not built with that label, but you could do it based on referrals, follower count, any data that you can sync into Pylon, which either could live in your CRM or we can ingest via API. So both
Hmm.
both are options. Um,
And you can
yeah.
rename this field so you can make it less confusing as well. Like
Oh,
you could
perfect.
call it something. Yeah, yeah.
So there's actually no issue. Actually, it's perfect. It's it's already set up for you, Kate. Um, there was a question on, so yeah, we answered the hallucination question. There is a question on how can I avoid duplicating our knowledge base? So we
Okay,
currently
yeah.
store much of our internal operations and support documentation in Notion. How can we integrate that into Pylon? Is Pylon exclusively the only solution, or is there other documentation that we can ingest?
Oh, I see. I see. You can ingest other documentation. I think the tail end of a lot of workflows end up working nicely when you actually live in Pylon. When you use documentation in Pylon, because we can do things like help you auto update articles that are stale or help you generate new articles for like cases you haven't covered. And that's maybe one last thing to show in the demo in a second. But you can also import data from somewhere else, whether that's like yeah, whether you have it on like some public site and you can just give us the URL, or we can even import like a GitHub repo if you're like a more technical product. So those are possible. Yeah. So you'll still get the
Uh,
context for a lot of the AI features, as in the AI will know about doc you have in other places. It just won't be able to do things like make edits to them or suggest edits to them, or that like tail end of the workflow.
And then also one thing to call out for like internal versus external knowledge base too. We do, if you do integrate some sort of external or some knowledge base that doesn't live in Pylon, we do have like duplicate article detection. And so when you are looking at, hey, do we already have something for this? We can surface whether there are duplicate
Mhm.
articles already when you're looking at an article in Pylon.
And then one more workflow just to surface really fast is that tail end I was just mentioning, which is like in Pylon, because we see all the questions you're getting, we can tell you that, hey, this question about your Salesforce integration and how you can use it, it's happened 300 times and you don't have any docs on it. So you should probably write some docs on it. And that creates a nice flywheel over time where you write that doc, then that new support person who's onboarding next week, when they get this question, the doc just gets suggested to them automatically. And so they don't have to like go discover things. It just kind of shows up to them, and then they can work using that. Or if you're deploying AI agent to customers as well, the AI agent will now have the answer to that question like formalized, and it can use that to answer future questions.
Awesome. So a couple more questions here. Tyler had one about, does the two-way Salesforce sync only apply to account level fields or also to opportunity fields? Right now, it's pulling on just account level fields. But the way we solve that ourselves and how we recommend to customers right now is just have a roll-up field in Salesforce or HubSpot on the account level. That usually solves most of the problems. So for example, if it's like, hey, do they have any big deals open? You can have a roll up, you can have a field on a Salesforce account that says, hey, they have a big opportunity open. It's not perfect, but it gets the job done now. And yeah, add with any like notes or
Yeah.
direction you can offer there.
Yeah, well, we're probably going to add support for the opportunity type data. We're just a little bit further away from it. So as Marty mentioned, you can stopgap it with for most things, you can roll it up onto the account and then sync it in.
Awesome. One quick question from Steve. Hi, Steve. We do not have an MCP endpoint just yet. Add any notes you want to add there?
That's right. If you want to unlock yourself right away, there are a lot of tools that can just generate an MCP off of APIs. And so all our APIs are public and you can see the docs and schema. And there are a bunch of tools that we've seen some customers use to just generate an MCP on top of us. So you can do that to just get an MCP going. We haven't yet built one just because we're trying to gauge whether MCPs, though a lot of people are using them, there's also a lot of talk that they actually just make the AI way worse because of the number of tools it has access to call now. So we've just been working on improving some other things before broaching MCP.
There was a question from Josh on, can Pylon look back in a Slack channel earlier when it was added to generate AI answers to these prompts? The answer is no. Right now, we don't look back into the channel. That is something that would be really valuable, of course, but yeah, not currently available. And then I know there was actually, Katie, you asked a question in the very beginning, first question, and highest number of votes actually, which is, how do you think about this is actually a really fun one. How do you think about the balance between when a customer should go to support versus their implementation resource during the implementation period? Said differently, when should we tell a customer to reach out to support versus chat live with the implementation consultant in that phase?
Yeah, I actually think the ideal answer to this is you don't have to tell your customer what to do there, and they can just put their question into a void, and then you have to figure out using tools like Pylon, like where it gets routed, which is exactly what we do. We don't ask our customers to specifically talk to a certain person. That way, under the hood, we could have many different people helping the customer, and we open Slack channels with most of our customers, and so they just post a question into the Slack channel. We AI route it to the right person on the team, and then have the tooling internally to like basically pass questions between people. And so that's actually how we solve that problem. And it's like not to project your org structure onto the customer and let them they just want to get their question answered. They don't probably care really who answers it or who helps them. So just let them do that. And then you add some process and tooling on your end to like get it to the right person is how we think about it.
Yeah, and maybe to give an example of this, there are different channels where you might expect it might even be more targeted. So, for example, there's live chat. Excuse me. There's live chat that could, of course, maybe be directed towards support by default, but actually because we are triaging to all these different teams, so we might actually notify a CSM in that case if it's related to an upgrade on their account.
Because you could do interesting things too that way. Like you might in the steady state have a lot of those things go to support, but if the customer's super low sentiment and high ARR, maybe the thing you normally would send to support, you actually want to go to CS first because they have more context or would be able to give a more nuanced answer. So the nice thing is you can like build in all those work. You don't need to make it super complicated to start, but like as your process matures, there's more people helping with customers. You have more like, striation in how you think about customers. You can like build out different workflows for each of those things is the nice part.
Awesome. I know we're out of time here. It's been really great. Thank you everyone for joining and for all the great questions. Hopefully this was helpful, but yeah, if you have more questions, please let us know. And yeah, if you are already a Pylon customer, you know where to reach us. And then if you're not, please book a demo or yeah, it's we'd love to work with you long term. So thanks. And thanks Cassie for organizing this webinar. Yeah, cheers. Thanks everyone.